Hello, this is Scott Snyder with Mellen Money Management here in Ponte Vedra, Florida. I'm here with my partner, Ian Aguilar, and today we're doing a video that Ian has created a list of the 10 rules for funding the cost of college. And basically, I'm going to start off with reading off each of the 10 points, and then Ian's going to go into explaining a little bit more about why these rules are so important. So starting off with the first one, Ian, is starting early saves later. Can you talk a little bit more about this?
Yeah, and to be honest, this isn't rocket science. Everyone understands the idea that the earlier you start, the easier it is. And when you break it down, it's just you've got more time to have your money invested in the market. And also it smooths out the ups and downs of the market over that time frame. So it makes it a little bit more predictable for people who start off earlier versus people who start off later. And you've seen people are starting to do that more often. There's a study from Fidelity Investments that shows that 37% of U.S. parents are starting college savings within the first 2 years of their child, whereas that used to be 21% even just 4 years ago. So that's changed and it's heading in the right direction. But it really does matter when you look at it. If you were to start saving in that time frame with just $200 per month, you could have up to $71,000, assuming a 7% average rate of return by the time your kid goes to college. Whereas if you waited till they were 10, which is not unheard of, a lot of people do that, you would only end up with $26,000. So big difference. 71,000 could pay for the whole thing if you want, depending on what school you go to. Whereas 26,000, that's not going to pay for the whole thing pretty much anywhere you go. I mean, unless it's a community college or something on the lower end, and you get a lot of scholarships.
I actually did a peer review on a FPA white paper that they were publishing, and I don't remember the exact statistic, but I remember them saying that basically if you start saving for college from day one of your child being born, it's about you only pay about 20% of the sticker price.
Yeah, 100%. Just because, again, you have more time. And you think about it too, let's say someone who starts when their kid's 10, you could start on a bad year, and that could really just shoot yourself in the foot for only those 8 years that you've got after that. And that only comes more and more extreme as the longer you wait. A bad year can really set you back. Whereas if you have 18 years behind you, a bad year will hurt you, but it's not going to derail you completely.
Great point. Yeah. So looking at the second rule you have here, don't pay it all yourself.
Yes. And I think this more or less speaks to the idea of don't try and think to yourself, all right, well, my kid should be able to go to Harvard and I need to save X amount of dollars every year in order to pay for 100% of what the sticker price of Harvard is. Because then you're going to have a ton of money in a 529 plan that's just stuck there that you probably could have put elsewhere and served you better. And the idea is that you're going to have certain amount of what you put towards college come from scholarships, come from financial aid, come from friends and family. You could be even tapping into student loans at some point if you wanted to. But there's a ton of different ways you can pay for college. And typically what we suggest is anywhere between 50 to 70% of the cost of college is what you want to aim for in some sort of savings vehicle, because then the other stuff that you can get will pay for the rest. There's this very, very popular study that Sally Mae comes up with every year, how Americans pay for college, and it's broken down by 43% of it comes from actual savings and income, 31% of it comes from scholarships and grants, 24% of it is covered by borrowing, and then 2% is covered by friends and family. So it doesn't always come from you putting the $200 away per month for college. It comes from a whole host of different
more than one way to skin the cat if you're using.
So I don't want people sweating it and thinking to themselves, oh man, I got to save so much every month in order to make sure I can pay full boat for the school whenever my kid goes to college. It's important to think about that, but I don't think people should be trying to hit a number that might be unrealistic for certain people.
Don't pigeonhole yourself into just thinking one way is the only way to do this. There's a lot of ways to go about this, and still be able to send your kid to the college that they want to go to a lot of times.
Yep, spot on.
So your third point you hear, education saves on education.
Yeah. So you think to yourself, when was the last time you paid for college or went through that whole process? And it's probably either one of two things. A, when you went to college. So when you and I went to college, even for us, we're generally on the younger side of parents, and it's completely night and day for what it will be compared to what it is today. That whole process, the financial aid process, how scholarships are given out, that's changed dramatically even just over the last 15, 20 years. Going through re-educating yourself as to how all those things work is very important. And it gives you the knowledge and the know-how as to how to best go about the whole college shopping process. Because it's very different. I mean, the other thing is sometimes people have a sibling that went to college maybe 4 years ago, 3 years ago. That's when it's fresh and you probably have some familiarity with it. But in all likelihood, you went through it one time, you kind of just barely got through, and you have to relearn the system when your other child goes to school. It's just when you've got more information, you're much better off to be able to find out financial aid strategies, look for the best scholarships, all those things. It's very important to be on the up and up. And all these high schools have these guidance counselor departments, and they're very helpful. And they try and point you and give you those sources of education. The only problem is they've got hundreds of kids per year that they're assigned to. So they're not able to put a lot of time into helping each and every kid as much as they would love to and want to. So a lot of times that education that you need to get for paying for college, it's all on you. You got to go out and find that information.
It goes to kind of the, looking at it from a sports metaphor standpoint of like, you can go to practice and learn, from your coaches there, but you're one of maybe several people on the team. So sometimes if you really want to take it to the next level, you got to go out and hire a private coach or somebody that can help you with more of your specialization.
Yep. And you gotta do your homework, man. You got to go out there and practice.
Exactly. And it's funny you say that, like, way you pay for college and the way, my parents went through it was a lot different than for me. And I remember my dad telling me, he's like, I don't understand why you have all this credit card debt after you just, you've had summer jobs, you've made good money. How do you have credit card debt? I mean, some of that was due to some fun, but keeping up with some of the more, the kids there that maybe their parents afforded them a little bit more. But, I think back in his day, you were able to get a summer job and pay for
100%. Colleges weren't the price of gold back then, and the amount of student loans that kids have nowadays is like, it's not even close. I mean, back then, student loans was something you took on, and it was paid off within a couple of years after you got out of college. Now they stick with you for a long time, especially depending on how much you take
20,
out.
25 years. Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely. So number 4, set expectations before your kids have any.
Yeah, I think this speaks to really just opening up the lines of communication between you and your kids. I think it's hard for parents to open up the financial side of conversations to kids. So in that respect, I understand completely that you don't want to sometimes create that line of conversation. But I think even for those type of parents who don't want to open up the finances to their kids, it's important to get a feel for where they're looking to go to college so that you can more finely tune your plan. They can have more a set of expectations of what you are willing to pay for, and what they have to figure out between now and the time they actually go to college. Because if you're doing this whole fire drill senior year in the last or the last couple of months before colleges are doing acceptances and all that, then you're probably behind the 8 ball, and you set yourself up for not being able to pay for some of the schools that you got accepted to.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. I think sometimes parents are almost willing to sacrifice their own retirement to get their child into the school of their dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And that's good, but just know the consequences to that. And I think that's where working with somebody that specializes in this area like yourself and our firm can help provide some guidance on what that really looks like. And so,
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. You bring up a good point too, in the sense that when you work with someone, if it's us, if it's a guidance counselor, if it's someone who's trying to make your college admissions letters look better, anything, a third party of any sort, I think it's helpful that they are somewhat of a mediator between the kids and the parents sometimes too, because then it isn't because mom and dad won't pay for me going to this school, or it isn't because I can't get into school X, Y, or Z. It's just because this is our person who's helping us communicate between each other so that we're all on the same page. And I think having a third party sometimes helps with that.
Absolutely. And I think also it helps bring some clarity in terms of, not sending your kid to the just to the best school because it, has the best reputation or this or that. Looking at it from kind of, what is your kid going to study? Is it, are they going to be a teacher? Well, you probably, sending them to the most elite private school at $60,000 a year, is it really worth it? Mm-hmm. On a teacher's salary. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But again, that's where I think the families having a more open dialogue and understanding of the numbers really help. So number 5, go shopping even if you don't like shopping. I'll raise my hand on that one.
Yeah, I'm not a huge shopper either, but it kind of speaks to what you're just saying, is there's a lot of kids who have this dream school in mind, or all their friends are going to a certain school. I know for me growing up, all my friends went to UF. It was UF or bust. And that was the strategy that a lot of people had. And then you'd send out an application to 1 or 2 other Florida schools just as a placement backup, but you never went looking anywhere else, independent of what your major was, independent of what you were doing. For me, I didn't start looking until I had football offers coming in through the door. That's what kind of opened my eyes to the fact that there was other choices out there, and that there were other schools that were probably better geared for what I was wanting to get out of college. So I think it's sometimes just getting out of that shell and looking to see what else is out there. And trust me, there are a whole host of options that offer all different kinds of things. And I went to a small school that I feel like I never would have found had it not been for that quote unquote shopping process. And at the end of the day, even if you end up going and landing back at the same school that you started with, the good thing is when you have other schools to compare that first school to, A, you're more confident in your choice. B, you've actually got, sometimes for some of the smaller schools, you've got a little piece of leverage to negotiate with that school in terms of their pricing. So go shopping. It's fun. Enjoy it. Do the college trips. Take in the sites and the college campuses, because some of them are pretty cool.
Yeah, as much as I hate shopping in general, I think I would enjoy the shopping experience when it comes to my own children, and kind of going down memory lane, if you will, of what it was like when I was in college. So
yeah, for sure.
Number 6, price is flexible.
Yeah, and this kind of speaks to a little bit of what I was talking about, but what the price that schools put on their website, that is put on all these national websites that tell you how much it's going to cost to go there, is called like the sticker price, right? That's what it's where it all starts. But at the end of the day, what you end up paying can or can't be, sometimes will not be the sticker price. Sometimes, so we call that the net price, and sometimes it's much, much lower than the actual sticker price. And so that's where picking a school really comes into play, making sure that you are understanding of the financial aid packages that you're getting from one school to the next. And you can even negotiate with schools when you're given that financial aid package. At the end of the day, the price that you're being told, whether it's the sticker price or the net price, is flexible, especially with these smaller schools that don't have as many applicants. You can sometimes barter with them a little bit. Schools don't like that much, but I wouldn't say.
Yeah, well, because they're having to
yeah.
get less from their applicant pool. But at the end of the day, it's a competitive process for a lot of those smaller schools because they're looking for good students to help increase their standard, with benchmarked against their competition. So if it's a good merit student, there's a lot of times I think you'll see them willing to make some negotiating concessions.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just like any other shopping process, right? I mean, if I've got two guys who are coming to check out my lawn, I'm going to ask them what their price is, and I'm going to say, hey, look, Joe Smith offered to do my lawn for $50. Either you do it for 50 or less, or I'm just going to go with Joe. I mean, right. If I'm the shopper, I would suggest people do that with college too.
Absolutely.
To a certain extent.
Yeah. Don't be pushy or be a jerk.
Yeah.
Number 7, testing matters.
Yeah. And this is somewhat obvious. Obviously SAT and ACT scores are big determinants to scholarships and whatnot. Different schools have what are kind of automatic scholarships or whatever you call them. But a very good example of what I'm talking about is here in the state of Florida is called the Bright Futures scholarships. And basically you have a certain level of GPA. And once you have that GPA, there's a couple other factors, but one of the biggest factors is what is your test scores, your ACT or your SAT. And the difference sometimes between a 25 and a 24 can add up to thousands of dollars. So for example, if you want the Bright Futures scholarship, which pays for either 100% of your tuition fees or 75%, even if the difference between 75% and 0 is it sometimes can boil down to your ACT score of whether it's a 25 or a 24. If you have a 24, you get nothing. But if you got a 25, it covers up to 75% of your tuition and fees.
I think that's probably more valuable than a summer job.
Yeah, that's big dollars. You add it up depending on what school you're going to, maybe somewhere between $18,000 to $19,000. Yeah. Which, I don't know too many kids who are making that in their summer jobs, right? So maybe it does make sense for parents. Sometimes, a lot of times there's pushback from parents to pay for a really good SAT teacher or ACT teacher because they cost $1,000, $2,000, whatever it is, But when you think about it in this sense, it pays for itself, and so it matters for sure.
Absolutely, kind of looking under the hood looking into it a little bit deeper, really.
Yeah, and there's a lot of schools too that treat SATs and ACTs as optional nowadays. That's becoming a thing. I still think they're, though, pretty darn important. I think most schools still weigh on them heavily in terms of how they dish out some of their funds too, in terms of scholarship money. So I don't think that's a trend that's completely gone mainstream yet, but it is a trend.
But I think it's, if you're really going after the most competitive schools, you're going to need it.
Yeah, 100%.
Number 8, minimize student loans.
Yeah, and I know you know a lot about this piece, but we talk about that rule that we try and dish out to folks, that you don't want your student loans to be larger than your first year salary. So if I have $30,000 in loans, I want to make sure that my starting salary my first year is $30,000 or more. It's kind of what we tell people to aim for. And you know, in those undergrad first 4 years, the government doesn't even let you, in terms of their subsidized federal loans, they don't even let you take out more than $27,000 to begin with. That's, if you can limit it to $27,000, that's ideal, because generally the math works out in a standard 10-year repayment plan, which is what student loans are. That's their kind of their where you start off at, right? They start you off with that 10-year repayment plan on the back end. It's generally $100 per monthly payment for every $10,000 in student loans. So to my point earlier, if you had $30,000 in student loans, it's about $300 per month on the standard 10-year repayment plan.
But if you want to send your child to Duke and it's $70,000 a year, you're probably taking out more than just $27,000.
Yeah, I mean,
if you can't afford if you didn't do the planning and the saving to the earlier points you've made, that you got to be prepared and knowing what school you're looking at, and is it really worth the value you're putting into it in terms of what you pay.
Yeah. 100%. And that's where mapping all these pieces out, from the student loans to the scholarships to how much you've saved along the way, all those things, mapping it out so you can kind of create a college list, not only of the schools that you want to go to, but the schools that you can maybe afford, or even the ones you can't afford. It'll let you know how much student loans would I have to take out in order to go to a school like Duke. Is it realistic? Do I even want to do that?
Right. We're all trying to set up our children to be better off, and they're coming out of school with an insurmountable amount of debt. Even though they went to this great school, they've already fallen behind from day one, starting off.
Yeah, exactly. I think, that's one of the differences that you see between parents that we talked about, right? Like our parents, if you had to go into student debt, you weren't taking out this much. Colleges weren't that expensive back then. But now, I mean, sometimes certain schools can really put you in the hole.
Yep. Number 9, timing is everything.
Yeah, and this is really talking about, there are cutoffs, and colleges tend to be pretty strict about those cutoffs in terms of applications, financial aid packages, the federal financial aid, the FAFSA forms. Those open up on October 1st, and it is a first come, first served process. So you want to be first in line. You don't want to drag your feet when it comes to applying for financial aid, when you're applying for scholarships, all those things. You want to be on top of the ball, because if you aren't, it could mean real dollars that you're losing out on versus the latter. So that's something, timing, you want to be on top of it. You want to have a list of what schools you're applying to, what are the deadlines, so that you don't let anything slip through the cracks when it comes to the actual application process.
So it's true, early bird gets the worm?
Yeah, exactly. Early bird gets the worm when it comes to college, in more senses than one, for sure.
Cool. Number 10, enjoy it and go with your gut.
Yeah, and it's a process you only ideally go through once when you're shopping for colleges. A lot of kids nowadays end up going to 2, but like I said, you ideally go through this once. It's tough. There's a lot of choices out there, but sometimes you just got to go with your gut, right? You gotta jump and hope that you're making the right choices. One of the bigger choices that you make as you're growing up to be an adult when you're a kid, and especially for parents too. I think it's a huge financial decision. So being able to feel good about that decision is important, and making sure that you enjoy it. If you're spending that much money on
something physiological about your gut telling reaction. I've read studies on it, actually, that your gut oftentimes is telling you the right thing.
Yeah. And you would think too, when you're spending this amount of money on something, that I think the average public school, they say 4-year public school is $100,000 sticker price, and private school is $200,000. Man, you want to feel good about it after. At the end of the day, you want to make that purchase and walk away and say, I did the right thing. Hopefully you're not accepting one of your college and saying, oh, I don't know about this one. This is such a huge purchase that you want to feel good about it when you walk away from it.
And there's other options out there like community college and ways
Yeah.
of getting creative. So I think that kind of speaks to what we as a firm do in the college space. And so if there are people out there wondering, is this something that, I'm just completely overwhelmed with? Well, this is where experts in the guidance counselors and the financial planning space, we can all work together and help you sort out that process. But knowing that it's a big purchase decision, there are people out there that can help you through this.
Yeah. I think we've gone through it enough times, and I think that's very important. You don't want to be going through this blind.
Yep.
So whether it's education on your own or through help that we can offer, it's important to have something like that.
Well, Ian, thank you for your valuable insights on this. I hope that our listeners at least got a few takeaways and help them in their journey. Thanks so much.
Thanks.